All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the special call board meeting for July 9th, 2020 to order. And I would entertain a motion for executive session. Item 2.1.
Mr. Chair, I move that the board convene an executive session for the purpose of discussion of a personnel update.
Second.
Thank you. We have the motion properly moved and seconded. And is there any discussion? All right. We will call for the vote at this time.
Hand vote, Mr. Chair. I'm voting in the affirmative.
Okay. Hand
Affirmative.
vote. We're good? Okay, perfect. And it appears to be unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. We are resuming public session for the meeting for July 9th, 2020. We are just coming out of executive session where we received an update on personnel. The motion was made by Mr. Manning to end executive session. The motion was seconded by Mrs. Mackey, and the vote was unanimous. At this time, I'm open to receiving a motion with regard to 3.1, approval of agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Mackey.
I move to approve the July 9th, 2020 special call board meeting agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Holmes seconded it. Is there any discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving the agenda of the July 9th, 2020 special call board meeting, please register your vote.
Ms. Avery-Hart, when you had the vote, if you will unmute yourself and report the vote, you can do that.
I'm waiting on Dr. Caution Parker and Dr. Elkins Johnson.
Okay, mine is not coming up.
I can mark you as yes if you'd like.
Yes, ma'am. Mark me as yes.
Dr. Elkins?
You can mark me as yes as well. Nothing came up.
Okay, the motion is passed 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. We now move to item 4.1, approval of consent agenda. I will entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda for the July, what is today's date?
Night.
For the July 9th, 2020 meeting.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Manning. Thank you, Mr. Manning. Second by Mrs. Mackey. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Chair, I'm not able to vote, so I'm going to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down so you guys will know.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Elkins. Was that a thumbs up? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Jill, mine hasn't come up either. I vote yes.
And the vote is 6-1.
Okay, thank you very much. Now moving to item 5.1, new business, no action requested. We will now have a presentation regarding reopening of schools and of course a discussion as well. Dr. Davis.
Good here. All right. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening to Mr. Chair, to our members of our board. We have this evening a presentation by Dr. James Ann Sheely, our Assistant Superintendent for Academics, who will be sharing with you information regarding the reopening of schools task force report. This report was a little bit different from the information we shared on our last board meeting. It does explain a little bit further into detail the direction that the district is taking as we prepare to re-enter, as we prepare for the fall and reopening of school. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Shealy. Dr. Shealy?
Thank you, Dr. Davis, Mr. Shad, members of the board, and Dr. Davis. Tonight, I will share with you an update of the work of the Reopening Schools Task Force, which is divided into 6 sections. Our defined challenge and goals, accelerate ed recommendations, DHEC assessment, preliminary survey data responses, draft reopening phases and recommendations, and preparation for our August 19th start date. I'd like to remind you that our defined challenge is how will we logistically open schools in the fall in the safest manner to ensure the most equitable learning for all students. We have 3 goals that guide our work. It's important that I read those to you tonight so that you can see how they correlate with our work that follows. Our first goal was that the physical school environment would embody public health guidelines to prevent a COVID-19 outbreak and additional closures. Translation is we would open in a safe and efficient manner. The plan must produce enough confidence that families, students, and educators feel comfortable and ready for learning in the fall. Communication with all stakeholders will be key. We must utilize a diverse group of teachers, parents, guardians, principals, and various district level personnel with expertise in the priority categories to ensure equitable solutions to meet all learners' unique needs. During our overview last week, I shared with you the Accelerate Ed recommendations that were proving to be the most challenging for us, and specifically point out the concerns regarding physical distancing. If you'll remember, I shared with you Blythewood Auditorium, a school bus, as well as a classroom. It is important to note that DHEC has developed metrics to categorize communities into low, medium, or high risk. Richland County is categorized as high in all 3 levels: incidence, trend, and percent positive. For now, the ratings are updated every 2 weeks. On July 1st, we sent our parents and guardians and students their 2nd survey, and the faculty and staff survey was launched on July 6th. Both surveys will close Sunday, July 12th. Reminders have been sent to both survey groups. As of July 7th at 3 p.m., you'll see the response rates are significant. 18.2% for our students, 37.6% for elementary parents, 42.5% for our middle and high school parents and guardians, and 40.7% for our staff. Again, this was as of July 7th at 3 o'clock. It's important to note that the purpose of the survey was to gather input to help the task force guide our work. Parents were not choosing a specific learning model. In this particular survey, the question that helps to guide our work is, how comfortable are you to return to school, brick and mortar school? Our preliminary results show that 44% of our students are either uncomfortable or very uncomfortable. 68% of our elementary parents are uncomfortable or very uncomfortable. 69% of our parents of middle and high school students are uncomfortable or very uncomfortable. And 72% of our faculty and staff are uncomfortable or very uncomfortable. On the next slide, you'll see that we've broken the results into categories. Here you'll see that our preliminary results indicate that 73% of our certified school level staff are uncomfortable or very uncomfortable returning to school brick and mortar. 70% of classified staff, 72% of district level classified staff, 76% of district level support staff, and 78% of our Richland 2 operations staff are uncomfortable or very uncomfortable returning to school. When the survey closes Sunday night, the final results will be posted on our Reopening Schools page on our Richland District 2 website. Based on our extensive research and the guidelines provided by DHEC, Accelerate Ed, and our multiple surveys, the Richland District 2 Reopening Schools Task Force has created a draft plan that uses a 3-phase approach for reopening our schools. Phase 1, which is in red, is considered high level and would mean that we would return to school virtually. Phase 2, which is yellow, is our medium level, and we would transition with additional options, including our design team models. And phase 3 in green will be our low incident level, which would be traditional, but continuing with options for our families. Based on DHEC guidelines, our recommendation for phase 1, while we are categorized by DHEC as overall high, we will operate virtually. Therefore, our draft recommendation, beginning school on October 19th, we will return to school virtually. There are still 2 options for back to school in phase 1. Absolutely. August 19th. August 19th. Thank you. You'll be interested to know that Richland District 2's virtual program is celebrating its 20th year and is expanding to include kindergarten through 12th grade. The Director of Virtual Learning is Dr. Emily Manigo, and information regarding the virtual program can be found on the FAQ section of our Reopening Schools website. As I mentioned last week, we are proud of our work that our Teaching and Learning Department and our teachers did with e-learning last year, but through that experience, we learned a lot. And as I shared with you last week, we have professional learning opportunities available for all faculty this summer to make sure that our e-learning is strong and meets the needs of our students and families. When we move to phase 2, or our medium level, we have 3 options for both grade bands. For elementary, we'll have our virtual school program, we'll continue with e-learning, or we'll transition to classroom community models, which was developed by our Richland 2 design teams. For medium, phase 2 reentry for our 6th through 12th grade students, they'll have 3 choices as well: to continue with their virtual school program, e-learning through their schools, or AABB blended with e-learning days. We've received some questions from our parents as to why the community model was not included on the 6 through 12 model. In the elementary setting, we can operate within that one classroom, creating our own bubbles for our children. In the middle and high schools, due to varying schedules, we cannot keep our students in one classroom. Therefore, we cannot adhere to Accelerate Ed guidelines or DHEC guidelines by offering a 5-day model for our middle and high school students during phase 2. Our AABB blended model will be a combination of 2 days in school for our students and 3 days of e-learning. This allows for 1 day of deep cleaning during the AABB cycle in between groups of students coming in. Now that we know our parents are interested in this model, based on our survey results, plans are underway with our academics department, who will begin ironing out the details next week with our middle and high school principals. Phase 3, which is our green light, we're able to return to traditional learning, but still offering the options of our virtual school program, as well as e-learning for our families who are more comfortable with that learning model. Information regarding all learning models will be on our website, and parents will have the opportunity to start making their choices later in July. Our 3-phase draft reentry plan will be on our website for the next few days so that we can receive public input with the goal of finalizing our plan and sharing with our board on July 21st. As we prepare for our August 19th start date, we will continue to analyze our survey results, use data for decision-making, communicate to all partners, provide information regarding our learning models before parents need to select their final learning options, and initiate our plan. We would be absolutely remiss if we did not thank our medical community for their support during our planning process and their pledge to support us as we move toward our final destination of phase 3. We especially would like to thank Dr. Daniels, Dr. Birch, and Dr. Widener, Prisma Health Pediatric representatives, for meeting with us and helping us to gauge where our next steps will be for community support and education as we move forward to phase 2. Also, a very special thank you to our entire Reopening Schools Task Force, and especially Dr. Funny, our infectious disease physician who served on our task force and played an integral role in the design of our pre-K through 2nd grade model. As one of the largest and most diverse school districts in the state, Our goal is to follow an informed, equitable, and considered process for reopening. We want nothing more than for our children to come back to school when it is safe for faculty, staff, and students. When the task force first began this work, Dr. Davis charged us with giving our parents options and for coming back even stronger than we were before we left. We've worked hard to accomplish that expectation. We have provided options with our 3-phase reentry plan, and due to the extensive list of what we've learned and what we must yet do, that I shared with you last week, we will be even stronger. My colleagues and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Board members, Mrs. Agostini.
Thank you, Mr. Chad. Thank you, Dr. Davis. Thank you, Dr. Shealy, for your thorough presentation. I have a couple of questions. First of all, will it be possible for us, we're not stuck in one phase when we start the school year. Will we be shifting through phases as the risk level changes?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. Hopefully sooner rather than later, when those numbers go down, then we'll be able to shift. We met with our principal reps a couple of days ago, and they told us that they can make those shifts within 2 weeks. So we look forward to shifting to phase 2 as quickly as we possibly can once our numbers adjust.
Okay. My next question is the AABB schedule for the 6th through the 12th grade. Can we get a little more clarity? For example, is it the same teacher that will be teaching the AA and then the e-learning, or is it the same teacher teaching Monday, Tuesday, then Thursday, Friday? How does that all work out?
Those are the details that our principals will be working with the academics team next week with. But I know right now that the same groups of children will come in for 2 days in a row. And that's specifically designed so that we can keep those cohorts together as much as possible. We have a deep cleaning day, and then the second group comes in on Thursday and Friday. I'll be happy to ask Ms. Gregory to unmute and add anything else to that conversation.
I will be happy to do so. Good evening. If you don't mind me taking a minute, and I'll walk you through a student and what it would look like. Let's just say Will Anderson is a student. In this model, they would follow a fairly normal schedule other than staggered arrival and departure. And Monday and Tuesday, yes? Yes. That's okay. I'm so used to having it cut off. Anyway, Will Anderson on Monday and Tuesday would attend school face-to-face. And on Wednesday, that would be a day where he could possibly have remote learning, which could be synchronous altogether online, or asynchronous, which would be independent. But that would be a day in the middle where schools would be doing deep cleaning, but teachers could assist students from the first group A that met on Monday and Tuesday, or the teacher could work with the next group that's coming in on Thursday and Friday, which would be group B. And teachers have access to a resource we purchased, software that they can use for content and interventions to accelerate and remediate. So AA, Monday and Tuesday, Will comes to his face-to-face class. On Thursday and Friday, Will be working asynchronously. He can go deeper with what he learned on Monday and Tuesday, but he could possibly come back and revisit the class with Group B if he needs clarification. But the teacher will have another group of students on Thursday and Friday. Does that make sense?
I'm getting there, but no, it's starting to sink in. It's a lot to absorb, but
we'll do a graphic. We plan to do a graphic. I think it'll make it a little bit easier if you can visualize or see it.
Okay, thank you. And then I just final comment. If Dr. Shealy, if you wouldn't mind commenting on this, I've heard from a lot of teachers and parents about the survey And they've made the comment that it's really hard for them to commit to something when they're not sure what they're committing to.
Thank you, Ms. Agostini. They're not, the second survey or the first survey, they were not committing to anything. They were just helping us to gather information so we would know what they were interested in, what kinds of learning models they were most interested in. No commitments yet. In fact, they won't be committing until later in July. I'm reluctant to give a specific date, but that probably will hover around July 26th. And Ms. Agostini, if you don't mind, if I can add just a little bit more about the AABB, a different side note. We recognize that some of our students, like our CAPE students, some of our special needs children will need more time than AABB would allow. And so this flexibility would allow us to give them that additional time where they could possibly be at school more than those two, brick and mortar school, more than those 2 days.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes.
Yes, I'm glad. First of all, thank you, Dr. Shealy and your team, and especially about the CAPE part, because I know that there will be parents that were worried about students that will have such classes such as cosmetology, and would they be able to get their hours? So I appreciate that. My additional question was from the guidance standpoint. I heard you say that the principals and other people in school have been going into how to do this, but have we been inclusive of our guidance counselors, especially on the high school level, since that's going to encompass them working through Power School, changing schedules, changing the master schedule? Have we thought about getting them in as soon as possible to look at that? Because that's going to be a lot of work on the guidance department. And also the guidance department is usually going to be the area that parents are going to be directed to field those questions. So I just want to make sure that we were including them on the beginning and before school started.
Yes, ma'am. They have been included. We had representatives on our design teams. Dr. Tusher Morgan has been an integral part of our planning, and they will definitely be on the front end of everything that we're doing.
And will they be allowed to have time to input those schedules, because all that stuff has to go into Power School?
Yes, ma'am. We have so far been very fortunate in getting additional support for voucher days, and we will continue in that realm.
Okay, great. I just didn't want them to be overcome with making all those changes at the last minute. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions. One of them I asked beforehand, but I'm asking publicly and indicated several questions I had that I got clarity on beforehand. But one of them that I wanted to ask publicly is I was asking how much autonomy do we have with regard to the education models we have. If we've been watching the news, we'll see that Donald Trump and Betsy DeVos have both demanded that schools start back on time, and they've used some terms like traditionally, I'm not sure that they knew what that meant, traditionally on time in the fall. And then they were very clear that it was up to local school districts and states to figure out how that's done. So one of the things I wanted to say / ask is that I appreciate the models you're trying to employ. And in an ideal world, everyone, well, I'll say that separately. I appreciate the models you're trying to employ, but I wanted to reiterate, because I got the answer to my question yesterday, that a lot of what we're doing is out of our hands. I know there are federal mandates and there are state mandates that we're going to have to follow. So I think we're trying to do the very best that we can on a local level, considering that there's still some federal and state mandates that we're going to have to comply with. Is that not correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. Second thing I wanted to say, actually, I got a question from a parent that was asking with regard to the live learning and remote learning. Are the schedules going to be synced such that if you have a kid that's in, that's a K through 5, one that's in high school, are the schedules kind of fluid? Like if parents need to go to, are the timing of those schedules are the same, or because they're, especially with, the ABA models, are the schedules going to be synced, or are they going to be like different schedules like we have right now? Or with virtual learning, do you pretty much just go at your own pace? That was a parent question I had.
The R2 virtual program is based on learning at your own pace. It is competency based. The e-learning could be somewhat self-directed in some ways, but much more with guidance. Now, Dr. Manigo is ready to answer any questions regarding e-learning, but your question also may be, are we going to be able, or will we try to synchronize schedules so that families don't have different children going to school on different days?
Absolutely.
Yes, and the answer to that question is yes. Will Anderson will be helping us, along with our GIS, to best figure that out, whether it's however that might work. But we are very cognizant that that's important. And
thank you.
To the best of our ability, that's what our plan will allow us to do.
Okay, thank you. And I don't need a deep dive on that. I'll direct parents to whom they need to talk to with regard to that, with regarding a deep dive. That
would be Will Anderson.
Thank you. Yes, with regard to how their child is affected. Third thing I wanted to say to us, as board members and to community parents, please talk to legislators regarding universal broadband access. I'm thankful for the virtual school learning options, but there are pockets, in our county, our state, and our nation that don't have internet access, not simply don't have a plan, but there are places where people don't have even an option for internet access. They may need a hotspot. Another district is great about providing Wi-Fi zones. But that's just something that we have to, in my opinion, internet access, broadband, universal broadband access should be as accessible as utilities, as accessible as running water. So that's just something that I would encourage people to talk to your legislators about, making sure that everyone in the state has access to the internet. That's just a statement. That wasn't a question. Thank you, Dr. Shealy, but thank y'all for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other board members? Okay, Dr. Davis or Dr. Shealy, I did have maybe two questions. I just wanted the public to understand, if we go with this schedule in the medium level, when the parent decide to put their child, if they decide to go to virtual school, then they are agreeing to have their child in virtual school for the entire year, regardless of what may change going to low or what have you. They are locked in for that entire year. Is that correct?
They are not locked into e-learning or community models. They're not locked in. We know we have to be extremely fluid with that because of parents' anxiety levels and numbers. So if a parent chooses e-learning and they realize, okay, my friend's children are doing fine in the community model, my friend's children are doing fine in AABB, they seem safe, I want to make that change. Our principals understand we need to make that change. We also need to provide guidance when needed. If a parent asks, do you have a recommendation for my child as to which model might be a best fit, then we understand that we can help parents with those decisions.
Okay. And then as to the virtual school.
Virtual school, let me get Dr. Manigo on the line and let her answer that for you, because I don't want to misspeak on that.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. As far as the virtual Richland 2's eSchool program, we are requesting that parents who enroll their students in our program allow their students to stay for the entire year. And a great part of that is the fact that we will allocate resources or reallocate resources to that program in order to support the needs of the students that are there. And so if students enroll in that program and we are using teachers that are currently employed in Richland 2, if those students move back and forth, that would cause could potentially cause issues with resources at the school. So for the 2020-21 school term, we're asking parents to commit to their students staying in the Richland 2 East School for the duration of the year. It may be helpful to give a little background. When we began discussing. Yes. I do. Okay, sorry about that. Didn't realize it. Yes, I apologize. It may be helpful to understand that as far as the background of our interest in creating a program, it didn't start with COVID-19. This is something we've been discussing in the district to meet the needs of our families for over the last few years, and we're looking at moving in this direction over in the coming years. And of course, COVID-19 has fast forwarded the need for this. And so really we are looking at families who have a medical condition for whom the student themselves or someone in their family has a serious medical condition to the extent that they know they will be unlikely to go back to school for the duration of the 2020-21 school year. Additionally, we have a lot of parents that are looking at options for virtual learning outside of the district, homeschooling options, and we of course want to keep those students in Richland too. So this is an opportunity for us to serve our community. And the creation of the school will protect us. But really to address that question, it is all about resources and allocation of resources and how important that is. So we are asking families that commit to Richland 2's eSchool program this year to commit for the entirety of the year. And then at the beginning of the 2021-22 school year, when things hopefully are back to normal, they can make a choice to stay with us. And we would hope that some parents, if this is in the best interest of their students and it's a good fit, that they will stay with us. And those students that would like to go back to their zone or assigned school will have an opportunity to do so.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, with regard to the e-learning model, I know that our teachers are going through professional development now. But I thought I recalled there may be some information that'll be sent out to the parents just to sort of get them prepared for an e-learning environment if we go that route in terms of starting up this fall. I just wanted to make sure that if you all can confirm that for the public, that there will be some resources for them as well as they enter this fall.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Resources, support. We learned a lot last spring, and yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Mr. Shad, I think it's also important for us to communicate. I think Dr. Sheila, if you or Ms. Manigault will want to share, or Mrs. Gregory, I think it's important for us to also communicate to our community that e-learning will not look like it looked at the end of school last year. So I think sometimes maybe the community has this could have a perception that it's going to be the way that it was when schools ended. And that was really, I think Patrick Kelly coined this term, emergency kind of deployment of education, where we had to just kind of come up with some things. And as you remember, we had several weeks where our elementary students, particularly those in kindergartners to our second graders, up to third, fourth, fifth grade, didn't even have their devices with them, so they were doing packets. And then we were just kind of doing we were doing various assignments throughout the remainder of the year. The e-learning will be a lot more structured than it was at the end of the school last year. So it won't look exactly like it. It won't look, I don't think, anything like it looked when we were in March to June. So Dr. Sheila, do you want to touch on that just a little bit?
Yes, sir, you're absolutely right. I think we don't want them to have the perception that e-learning is the old e-learning. Again, Ms. Gregory and her team did a fabulous job. It was emergency deployment, and they did a fabulous job. But we know that we can't continue e-learning that way and keep our children learning in the way that we want them learning here in Richland too, as you say, in a premier way. So it will be designed in a much more structured way. There'll be schedules, and as I just would say, as a parent, I would be excited about the opportunity for e-learning based on what I'm learning from teaching and learning and what they're planning.
And also, I don't know if we've done a good job of explaining what synchronous and asynchronous classroom structures look like. We've used that terminology. I think that's a terminology that's an educational term that can be used in educational spaces, but those who are watching and parents are asking, well, what does that really mean? Let's give them an example of what that means.
I actually had to look it up back in the spring. So I'll ask Ms. Gregory or Dr. Manigo, I think you're still on here, if they will answer. They're both excited about it. So
in the synchronous space,
I think Ms. Gregory was prepared to answer that question.
Because I would answer it.
That's okay. Synchronous is all together. And so if I was having a class and speaking to all of my students on Google Meet and doing direct instruction, that would be synchronous. If I had taught a lesson and my students were doing independent practice, that would be asynchronous, working independently. And Dr. Davis, as Dr. Shealy is talking about e-learning and how it'll look different, you can expect e-learning to be focused on our essential state standards and providing synchronous together as a class, and asynchronous where work is completed by the student. And as you said, much more structured. Schools are going to focus on necessary interventions and supports to ensure student learning and to address learning gaps. Mr. Shad mentioned about the intense professional learning. We're excited. Every single teacher in Richland 2 is participating in a series around the e-learning framework for consistency across the district. And we're really excited about those modules, that every teacher will have done that with support from school-based technology learning coaches as they implement e-learning when school returns. And in addition, we have designed to put forth our vision for e-learning in Richland 2, and also organization, a system-wide framework that addresses the e-learning expectations, platform, best practices, and PD. We've invested in teacher resources, and in addition, going to devices for K and 1. So we have learned a lot and have been very busy this summer.
I hope we've had an opportunity. We also shared, as we sent the documents out earlier, with some sample or a clip to a sample lesson for kindergarten classroom this summer, as we were working to putting our reading camps, our reading programs together, so that you could get an example. And if we haven't shared that clip with the board, it'd be important. I think it'd be beneficial for them to review that as well. So that it can see what that asynchronous and then synchronous classroom feel looks like. That is, it can give the real feel of a classroom experience, although we may not necessarily be physically together in the classrooms. In addition to that, we have also discussed the possibility of allowing teachers to come into their classrooms to deliver their e-learning from their actual classroom environment. Now, the students may not necessarily be there, but to give the teachers, if they choose and want the resources from the school building, have access to the technology that is in their classrooms in order to be able to deliver their e-learning classrooms. I don't believe that that's something we're going to make mandatory, but we will make it available, because I have spoken to some teachers, and some teachers would like the opportunity to be able to come in and use their school resources to be able to deliver their e-learning classroom environment platform from their classroom setting. Mr. Shad, if there aren't any additional questions, and we stand ready to answer any, but I would like to call Ms. Ruth in to share just with the board and with our community a little bit about how we plan to communicate this.
Mr. Shad, Mr. Chair, I have one more question. I'm sorry.
Sure, Mr. Manning, and then
I apologize. So the magnet programs, virtual versus e-learning, have we worked through the issues that may come up with that?
Yes, sir. Barbara Turner has been working through that, and she is online ready to answer.
Okay, I tried to start my video, but it wouldn't let me. Hello, everybody. Yes, in terms of for students who have or enrolled in a magnet program, if they do decide that they would like to utilize the R2 eSchool program, we will hold a seat for them to return and re-enroll in their magnet program for the 2021-22 school year. And keep in mind, if they utilize the e-learning through their school, the school-based e-learning, they will still be engaged with their normal teacher and the school-based magnet theme curriculum that they would traditionally be involved with had they been in school face-to-face.
So if they choose the virtual program and mid-year we go back, then we would ask them to re-enroll at that point in their magnet program. Is that what you stated?
No, the re-enrollment is only for those who choose the Richland 2 eSchool program, because that's a one-year commitment.
So virtual, no matter what, you commit for the year, as was stated earlier, for resource issues, and also I imagine staying in sync, so to speak, with classes because it's more self-paced. E-learning, so if you're in a magnet, you're really, I'm not going to say encourage, that's not the right word, but if you are in a magnet, you do e-learning and we come back, then you come back to your magnet program, so to speak.
Yes, it's really advantageous for anyone in a magnet program to do the school-based e-learning because you will be continuing with your magnet theme curriculum regardless.
Okay, thank you.
And that's what I've been sharing with my team to make sure if they have some parents who are on the fence about whether to do the Richland 2 school program, virtual program, or the school-based e-learning, try to encourage those families to do the school-based e-learning because the school-based e-learning, they'll still get their magnet curriculum regardless. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Thank you so much for that answer.
Excuse me 1 second, Mr. Manning, can I just clarify that for the eSchool, there will be aspects of flexibility for students, but there will be teachers assigned, and so students will be expected to work at a pace that is set by the teacher in order to ensure that they are meeting the benchmark we expect them to meet. Now, there are aspects of competency-based learning that we are hoping to include in Richland 2's eSchool program beyond the COVID-19 crisis that we're in. But ultimately, those students the e-learning experience will be very similar. So again, those students who choose to participate in the eSchool should be families who, for whatever reason, know that they do not wish to come back to school, at least for the 2020-21 school term. So I do want to make sure that that although there will be flexibility, students will have a highly qualified instructor that will work with them. There will be a schedule, and so students will be expected to meet synchronously and also complete asynchronous assignments as they would if they were participating in e-learning at their schools. So I want to make sure that that is clear, so that the thought is that the students are teaching themselves. That is not the case. They will have a highly qualified teacher that will be working with them, that will schedule time to meet with them, that will provide interventions, that will provide SPED services as necessary. So we'll meet each student where they are to address their individual needs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair, one final question.
Yes, Ms. Agostini.
Thank you. And I'm back on the AABB blended with e-learning days. Is it the same teacher that I will have for, say, my AP calculus the whole time through the I'm an AA learning, and then I'm doing my blended learning or my e-learning at home? Is it the same instructor for all, or will they be different?
Ms. Gregory?
Same instructor for content areas.
Okay, thank you.
Schedule, but you will have the same teacher for calculus. You won't shift. No.
Thank you.
That's a good question.
Okay.
I think that's a good question that Ms. Agostini asked. I think in our next update, if we could maybe expand that out a little bit, maybe have the graphic to show what that looks like. The example that we were talking about earlier, have that example in some sort of graphic form so that you can see what what that actually looks like, what a traditional, a typical day of an AABB student would look like in our middle schools and our high schools would be beneficial for our community as well. And if we can have that for our next board report regarding COVID would be beneficial.
Super.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ruth?
I think we have one more question from a board member. I think it's Ms. Mackey has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
Ms.
okay.
Mackey?
Yeah,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just had a comment. Just wanted to, I know that there are surveys available and the district has gone through great measures to try to get feedback from parents, teachers, and community. But one of the things that Ms. Shealy and Ms. Ruth were able to provide to me beforehand is that if people have questions or want to share feedback, they can do so at info@richland2.org, and that there will be an updated status of the reopening of schools at richland2.org/reopening schools. Is that correct? Ms. Ruth, I think I got it worded down correctly. Just so people can stay up to date with what's going on and can share information or feedback even if you didn't get a survey. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Mackey, you are correct. And we are, as you know, we live stream the board meetings, and on the live stream, the viewers are having a chat, and they're doing, putting out some great questions right now too. And we've responded that we'll be posting the frequently asked questions, and Dr. Shealy mentioned it. So on that website, www.richland2.org/reopening schools, we will put out by the end of the day tomorrow summary of the phase draft plan, and I want to reiterate right now it's a draft plan. We'll also be, as soon as we can get the video produced from tonight's meeting, we'll post that there, just like we did last update. We'll post the link to the full presentation, and we'll be adding the frequently asked questions. So again, on that website, there will be lots of information for our families and our employees to look through, and we'll continue to expand on that information. The questions on the chat that are being posed tonight, we may not get all of them answered by tomorrow, but know that we'll be constantly working on those, but we'll start rolling that out tomorrow on that website.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. All right. If there is nothing else, we will move to item 6.1, action requested. And it's regarding policy BEDH, public participation at meetings. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair?
Mrs. Agostini?
I'd like to make a motion, or I move to reinstate policy BEDH, public participation, and have public participation added to the July 21st, 2020 board agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Mrs. Agostini?
I'll just comment. I'm sure we've all had so many phone calls, but based upon Ms. Ruth's comments too about all the questions that are coming out, I would really love to see us reinstate this. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Seeing no further discussion, we will go ahead and vote on
Mr.
policy.
Shad, I have one question. I'm sorry. Do you want me to give a brief explanation for the public's information, since we still will be doing a virtual meeting, on how we think that will work?
Yes, that'd be great.
So what we'll be doing is we will allow those comments to be submitted through a Google form that will go live when the board meeting is noticed on the 17th of July. And that Google form will stay out there until about noon on the day of the board meeting. I will be reading those comments and following the same guidelines that we follow for public participation at our meetings. I have to be able to read them within 3 minutes. If they go over the 3 minutes, I have to stop. But since they will come to us in writing on the form, I will be able to provide the board with copies of all those, of any comments that we receive. So that form will be posted. If you want to make comments to be read at a board board meeting, that would be how we would do it, through a Google form, and then we'll be reading them at the board meeting on July 21st. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Board members? Okay, we'll call for the vote.
I'm waiting on Dr. Caution Parker and Dr. Elkins Johnson.
And Dr. Elkins gave a thumbs up in the affirmative as well.
Okay, it's 7-0 then.
All right, thank you. Motion passes. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this special call meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn the July 9th, 2020 special call meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, do so with your voice vote or your hand raised. Aye.
Aye.
All right. It sounds unanimous to me. Thank you all so much. You all have a great evening and stay safe.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.